Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. How you doing, Tom?
Good, Kevin. How are you?
Great. So you're back from ShopTalk 2023, and you
Back from ShopTalk.
you said that it was crowded, big. I mean, in a way that many conferences, even now, are not these days.
It's so big. They had when you have like the big ballroom kind of full, and it's just I don't know, 40 rows deep and four sections wide, and they got the big screens on. I think there was at least 10,000 attendees. It was a good size.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the theme was the great theater of retail, which is interesting to me in lots of ways. One of which is the fact that we seem to be at there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and we seem to be sort of at a transition point. And my question is the theater of retail a comedy or a tragedy? Right? Because well, we see just what happened this week with Boxed.
Yeah.
We had it's a much smaller scale thing, but we had Green Zebra not that long ago. It's a very uncertain climate in terms of companies that are out, looking for money and trying to grow and maintain momentum in difficult economic circumstances. Well, so let me. But the other thing that's interesting about the notion of the great theater of retail is when one thinks of retail theater, one thinks of the physical experience, not necessarily the online
Yeah.
experience. So it sounds like, and you and I have talked about this in advance of this conversation, there's a kind of unification taking place. You talked about it. They're talking about unified commerce, not omni-channel.
Yeah, I mean the store as being central to the retail experience was very pervasive at Shop Talk, and you could kind of feel it heading in that direction, a little bit in last year's Shop Talk, and then for sure in Grocery Shop in the fall. And I think it's right. I mean, it's a sign of where we are. It's a sign of where the customer wants us to be as an industry, and it was there wasn't a question of does the physical store play a role, in the next generation of retail and where it's going? It is, what is the, what is the value of the store and how do we best, take advantage of, or how we best leverage, our store presence. And, I think a part of the theater theme was very much that, stores are important and there is a sense of theater from stores, from physical, encounters, from physical experiences that you don't get
Right.
in just traditional e-commerce.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to talk about or focus on whether it's seamless shopping, unified commerce, frictionless shopping, whatever terms you want to use, I mean, it seems to me at some level you could look at, let's say, Boxed, right? Which is sad that it's going. Forgive me, you can hear that. That's the train going by, and I didn't close my window.
No, I can't hear it.
I'm enjoying spring. See, I'm keeping the windows. But Box was one thing for the most part, right? That I mean, they're going to sell off the software that they had, but in terms of an entity, it did not straddle for the most part two worlds.
Right. To a customer, they were one thing.
Right, for the customer. And so, does that point to the idea that not only is seamless shopping or whatever you want to call it important, but that points to the fact that you have to have the two things between which you're eliminating the seam, right? I mean, I'm stretching the metaphor here, but you have to have those two elements. If you're only one thing, you're in danger of limiting your growth, limiting your exposure, and limiting the degree to which the customer is going to come to depend on you.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're only one thing, you kind of need to be the biggest and best of that one thing. And that one thing needs to be really important to customers. Go to that one thing to serve whatever the needs are that one thing does. Right. And I think in life, people in general, they'll gravitate to retailers or any service provider that can do more for them better. And so, again, if you're only doing that one thing, It better be a big need, and you better be so much better than everybody else that I'm gonna trust you to take care of that for me.
Yeah. And even if you have that one thing that you're best at, you probably these days need to have multiple ways of getting that one thing to the customer. Yeah, especially if that one thing is a product, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's very unusual that you're going to be able to depend on the customer, either coming to you or only sending it to the customer via e-commerce. You want to have those different modes of delivery.
Well, absolutely. I mean, in the Box case, and I love Box as a business, and it really is tragic. They were, to the customer, they were an online version of a club store, where you had a somewhat limited selection, but relevant selection at good prices, conveniently delivered in a box. That's the name to your door. When that company was spawned, you had Amazon did that. Other retailers kind of did that. Amazon wasn't great at it. Amazon was always better at sending you one thing at a time, right? Or when you get a box from Amazon, generally it has a couple items in it. Maybe like in your case where you do subscribe and save, and you have lots of items coming together. You can serve that, but so they were serving, and it was a pretty good value proposition to the customer that, hey, I can eliminate a bunch of this stuff from my store trip. But unless you're eliminating so much from the store trip, right, that you make the store trip that much faster, then what are you really solving, right? So that's where these incumbent retailers that are being relied on for so much of the basket and so much of the need for the customer. If you can solve that part of the product need that Box was solving within your value proposition as Safeway, as Walmart, as Kroger, right, as Wegmans, if you can solve that, then you're going to get those customers back. Because it's hard for Box or anyone to do that one thing so well that you don't want to rely on that retailer that gives you the whole suite of serves the suite of needs with their suite of services.
And if I recall correctly, I mean, the reports were, I think, that early on, Kroger actually made a play for Box. Box turned them down. And in fact, in retrospect, that might have been exactly the deal that would have made sense, certainly for Box, and it might have given Kroger yet another, arrow in their quiver as they're trying to do. I mean, God knows what it would mean in terms of the Albertsons acquisition, but
right.
In that sense, might have been a really sensible thing to do.
And it was, I mean, I think Box was, coming up on 200 million in annual sales. So, for a Kroger to acquire them, it's such a small, it's a handful of stores, as far as volume goes. So I don't think it would have gotten in the way of anything Kroger is trying to do now, that was whatnot. And who knows how it would have fit with their Ocado strategy, and all that. And you can't, I mean, it's just cruel to think back. I've been on enough companies that have not taken deals we should have over the years. So I know how it goes.
Yeah.
You don't want to look back on those. Clearly, it would have been better for anybody that was a shareholder of the company at that time,
right,
than it ended up to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to me because if you think again, and we've talked about this before, to me, one of the reasons that Amazon may be having some trouble, and there's, it's more complex than what I'm about to say. But, to me, Amazon has its physical stores and it has obviously its e-commerce business. But as somebody who is, uses both, I mean, I've got a Whole Foods down the street from me and I use Amazon. There's no connection except for the fact that on a few items, relatively few items, when I go to Whole Foods, I'm going to get a Prime discount if I use my, if I indicate that I'm a Prime member. And other than that, there's no connectivity at all. So to me, they're not taking advantage of the notion of unified commerce, which is what Walmart seems to be doing a much better job of. And then if you take the other side of it, I mean, in your business for Plenium and then companies like Sifter, you're basically, I mean, it seems to me you're well positioned for the future because in essence, you're enabling both sides of the retail experience to be improved, whether it's online or in store.
Yeah, I mean, we are one thing, right? But we are one thing that becomes, by our design, we are part of somebody else's, bundle of things.
Yeah.
And
listen, I mean, yeah, you're one thing, but I don't mean it that way. I mean it in the
No,
sense
no,
that
I mean, I'm acknowledging like
you have to
being
be
one
the
thing can
right.
be good in
You have
our
to be
case.
somebody has to be the tailor that sews the pieces together.
Absolutely. And that's not
And
us,
you
that's
become
retail.
part of the thread.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, we have, just using Repunium as an example, I mean, we have a range of engagements with retailers that go from, I'm only auto replenishment within e-commerce, right? So I have to buy it online to get auto replen, to other retailers where, I can activate it at store shelf. Because I'm loyal to a certain brand and a certain product, I get that loyalty discount when I buy it in the store as well because I put it on auto replen, and that kind of creates that kind of synergy between or integrated experience between online and in store. Online and in store integration is hard, right? I mean, there's it's not you have different systems, you have different disciplines, but to a customer, it's one experience. It's one experience as they move between them, and when you think about the customer journey from from in their home, in their lives, all the way through the shopping experience back through again to that need state arising again. There's lots of opportunities for technology to help the customer, whether they're staying online or whether they're going in store. And I think some retail or all retailers now are recognizing that technology has to play a role throughout that. But it's hard, like you said, with Amazon and Whole Foods, that you got one of the best technology companies in the world, that bought one of the best grocery retailers in the world, or at least in the U.S. And you'd think that that company should be able to create a more unified experience between the two. If it literally is just scanning a store code to get some discounts and that's it, it just shows you how hard it is.
Yeah.
It's certainly not enough.
Yeah. And it was interesting, and I had the story about Dom's Kitchen and Market on Tuesday, but it seems to me that, and I didn't talk about this. I talked about the store experience more in my video piece, and those are the pictures I showed. But it does seem to me that just from looking at the store, they seem to be first of all, they are trying to integrate both the physical experience and the online experience, and seem to be laying the groundwork in the store for ways in which they could be much be much more ambitious and aggressive about using technology in the store, whether it's for retail media networks. They've got these great online shelf tags, in-store shelf tags.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff there that it seems to me they're building a foundation that could be really important to that format going forward.
I think that's going to be one to watch. Talking to tech providers that provide those capabilities in there. There's a lot in there now, and there's a lot more to come. And I think that harkens back to the Terbeek Smart Store days of yesteryear.
Right.
I think you're going to see that store be one that gets a bunch of these technologies in and is able to, and it's helping on a couple of different levels, right? It's the customer experience, right? So I get always updated prices, I get deals, I can scan my phone at a shelf to get extra deals, or maybe put something on auto replenishment. Maybe that's coming. I can but then also using the technology in the store to do things like in-stock monitoring to help with the e-com pickers, right? So when I'm fulfilling an e-com order, let's use the shelf labels to help me route and help me pick more accurately, right? And so you can kind of help the customer facing stuff, and you can help the underlying stuff with this technology. And we're still in the relative early innings, right, of the convergence of stores and technology. I think it's going to be pretty awesome to see where it can go.
It was interesting. I know you at ShopTalk, you said that the CFO of Target was there. And I thought this was interesting that 20% of Target sales are now digital, but 95% of sales go through the store network. So they're seeing a convergence there that seems pretty clear to me, that is giving them a roadmap on how they need to innovate going forward in terms of both e-commerce and the store.
Yeah, I mean, said another way, the old e-commerce model of ship to home, right? So ship from a fulfillment facility, not a store, parcel delivered to home, that's roughly 5% of their sales.
Right.
The 25% of the 20 e-com. So yeah, so they're definitely showing. They made that commitment a few years ago, even before COVID.
Right.
They said, we're gonna make the store central to our e-com experience, and that our customers are gonna love it. And 20% is big.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I can't. I mean, Walmart's nowhere near 20%. Imagine if they were. Oh my gosh, how big that would be. Although they're growing fast, and there's line of sight to that. But when you start thinking about, the Krogers and the Albertsons and all the other, the Aholds and all those big chains starting to get in that 15+% range,
yeah.
You're going to have to integrate your stores and e-com pretty well to be able to serve that level of volume.
You mentioned that in terms of just the mood of the place, it seemed to be sort of thumbs down on social media, thumbs up on retail media. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think, well, the mood was interesting overall. There was a lot of enthusiasm, just in general, among the tech companies and the retailers that were there. The tech companies that have done well with funding, the tech companies that have a lot of runway in the bank, like they're happy. And then retailers were, their viewpoint was, we definitely need to continue to invest in the differentiating technologies that are going to bring our experience forward, but we've got to be really careful about that. Like, we've got to really mind, our current economics. We're willing to invest ahead, but we got to make sure there's a good, tight ROI story on there. We're still going to innovate, but we got to be a little more thoughtful about how we innovate. So that was really good. I think in general, the between the combination of the individual shopper tracking that's going away via social media and thanks to Apple, and then that kind of a little bit falling out of favor for advertising, right? Yeah. Like, there's just not as much advertising ROI, coupled with just the general impact that social media is clearly having on society. And that was kind of pretty well acknowledged there. Like, a couple of years ago, you had, Twitter and Facebook and those guys kind of, or Meta, up there, espousing the value of their audience, right? In marketing for brands and retailers. You didn't see much of that at all now. There was, to the extent those companies were there, they were talking about different capabilities. And then Pinterest, the Pinterest CEO, I don't have his name top of my head right now. He was, he's self-serving, but he was being interviewed by Sarah Eisen from CNBC. And, he said, basically their take is that, when customers come onto Pinterest, you're there for a reason, right? You're going there because you have a need, you're looking to solve a need, and yet they have, a couple 100 million users, like a crazy high number. You might not be cut that high, but they have a big number. And basically the notion there is, we have a big audience for you. We're not exploiting them. They're actually looking for things. It's a great place to interact with customers. We give you a good platform for doing that. Without the downside of being tied into social media. And there was just a general theme of brands and retailers, not wanting to contribute, to the challenges that social media has been causing, in our society.
But I guess the overall good news is if retailers and tech companies were pretty optimistic, you mentioned to me at one point that investors were pragmatic but not negative. Those are positive signs, right? That
I think so.
We may be in, I hate to use the word malaise, I sound like Jimmy Carter, but if there's a little bit of that going on right now, it's not, it may be fairly shallow and not hard, and it won't require much to come out of it. Fair?
It feels that way. But we'll see. For investment, for venture investment into the space in general, 2022 was a relatively lean year. Now, on a historical, it's probably the third best in history, right? Followed by, 2020, 2021 and 22, or 2019, 20, and 21 were better. 22 kind of came back to like 19-ish levels. So, but it's way down from where it was. So I think in the near term it hurts. I think that the SVB failure and other anxieties around around the banking sector aren't helping. They shouldn't really get in the way of venture investment, but I think investors kind of want to get back in the game. I don't know that anybody wants to be the first one to get back in a big way, so they're all kind of standing around the pool, waiting to see who gets in and how the water feels. So yeah, I think that we're in Q2 already now. Hopefully by later this year we'll start to see that venture investment start to flow again, because nothing will stifle innovation in the industry more. I mean, the industry can be good at stifling itself, but
in the best of times, yeah,
right, at the best of times. But drying up investment capital would be really unfortunate, for the industry.
Again, we always say it here, right? Which is that yes, you may have to be more thoughtful, you may have to be more surgical, but at the end of the day, this is the time when retailers can take advantage of the moment to do things that are differentiating, so that when we emerge from whatever this is right now, they've got an advantage that other companies don't have.
Customers need you. They need you now more than ever. Right. And bring them some innovations, and they will thank you and reward you with their loyalty.
Or their dollars, if not their love.
Well, yeah, money is very expressive.
True. All right. Well, as always, thank you. And I will see you in 2 weeks.
Look forward to it. Thanks,
Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.